rolling? Ha! I got the point. All right. So everybody's doing okay. Glad to see you. It's just a little cool. Nice weather. And we're going to do something a little different since, typically you do it the week before. But I wasn't here, so I like All Saints Day. So we're going to kind of think about that today. As far as since it was yesterday, you're really supposed to do it prior to, but I can't help that. And so think about All Saints Day, and we'll think about that according to the passage too, but that'll come later. Just right quick I love All Saints Day because it helps us think about those people who've gone before us. And when it started out, it was basically they used to, that when there were martyrs in the early church, they would celebrate their death day until they kind of piled up, and there weren't enough days in the year, so they just moved them all to one day. It's kind of like when President's Day, I guess. You have now you got 47 of them. You either celebrate each, or I can't imagine William Taft Day. It just never really struck me as a day that would be a winner. So then you do All Saints the same way, and then it kind of morphed into this. Okay, we remember the saints who were the big, the poster saints, Augustine and those kind of folks, and then we kind of morphed into this newer kind of idea that we also kind of remember those people who made a difference, just in our lives. How is it that we think about those people who came before us, who made a difference in our life? And everybody has their, folks that you think about. I always think about Pat and Elaine. They were these Sunday school teachers that I had in elementary school, and it seems to me they taught every year. It's like, how did they teach me every year? Maybe my memories are a little skewed, but did they do it all through elementary school? That doesn't make quite sense. And how would they do that over and over? But they may have. I don't know. The church wasn't that large, so maybe they did. But I think about them, those folks that just showed up and got out the flannel board and taught, David and Goliath and the likes of those kind of things all throughout my childhood. And those people who really made a difference in the faith, and they could be anybody and everybody in your life along the way who have already gone. And then it also helps us think about those who aren't here yet, who are going to come after us. So then that kind of, we have to stop at that moment and go, who are the people who are going to be those saints for those folks who come after us? And then that's us. So we have to go, so now I have to act like I got some sense, and be a saint to those people who are following me, And so then that kind of makes you go, just some thoughts. But with being off a week, what an interesting passage we have for All Saints Day. Luke 19, 1 through 10. And you want to talk about this long journey coming to an end. And what a way for it to come to an end is to think about these last couple stories that butt up against Jesus going into Jerusalem, which is in chapter 19. Make sure I didn't tell them this. Yep, that's it. Last two stories before Jesus goes in. Kind of interesting, okay? You have Zacchaeus, and then you have kind of the talents. But we'll stick with this one today. So Luke 19, 1 through 10. He, being Jesus, entered Jericho and was passing through it. And a man was there named Zacchaeus, and he was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead, and he climbed up a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up, and he said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, he has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much. And then Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost. Familiar? Yes. Yeah. What do we know about Zacchaeus? He was a wee little man. He was a wee little man, right? Yeah. Interesting, we focus on that part, right? And let's hold on to that for just a little bit. We'll get back to that after a while, because I always think that's an interesting thing. But sure, because it is anytime you say Zacchaeus, the first thing that pops in my head, Pat and Elaine teaching me, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he, right? What a great theological concept. So, what did you hear? Or what jumped out to you that you don't already, you go, boy, I don't remember that.
I was curious about why. It starts off with Zacchaeus saying he just want to see this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's suddenly transformed in a way. And I wondered if it was because Jesus saw him. Because we've talked recently about people just needing to be seen. But it doesn't sound like he exactly was a follower of Jesus until Jesus said, come down.
Good question. And it is a good, hopefully we will have enough time to have this the conversation about that. Because in the sermon today, we treat it from that perspective. This is transformation. There is no, we're not told why what do we know? Well, first, we know Zacchaeus is small. What else do we know about him? Luke goes out of his way to tell us. Rich. He's a chief tax collector. He's not just a tax collector. He's a chief tax collector. And I'm like,
the top of the pyramid, Steve.
Yeah, what do you have to do to be the chief tax collector? So, yeah, he's the guy. So Luke goes out of his way to tell us several things about Zacchaeus. He's short. He's rich. He's a chief tax collector. And since he is a rich tax collector, he's a sinner. And
Probably not well liked.
And people grumble. Okay? You got the grumblers. What else? For whatever reason, we don't know why, but he is excited about seeing Jesus. Okay? Now, we can say curiosity. We can say he's led. Something draws him. He wants to see Jesus. He wants to see Jesus real bad. He wants to see Jesus so bad that a chief tax collector who is rich climbs up a tree. To me, that's just an odd story. Okay, rich people, it just seems to me that they'd have somebody else climb a tree for them. I don't know. But, he's a rich guy. He climbs up a tree. And it does, and Luke goes out of his way to tell us that Jesus looks up. Jesus looks up to see him. And what does Jesus do? Yeah, stop and says, I'm going to go stay with him. But I got to tell you, all these years, I read this story, first time I've ever seen this, like, wow, what's wrong with me? Okay, Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house. I must. I must. Jesus is like, I can't get past this. I've got to come to your house. Why is that? Why must Jesus go?
Because Jesus is showing that even people
Yeah.
like the chief tax collector are
Yeah.
willing.
Yeah. Because at the end, what's he say at the end? He's the son of Abraham, y'all. Y'all can't forget that part. Ugh. Okay. But I must go. I have to go. I can't get around this.
Which makes you wonder if Zacchaeus hadn't climbed the tree.
Yeah.
Would Jesus have seen him?
Not according to the song.
Here we are. Back to those discussions again. Did Judas have to do what he did? And what if Judas didn't do what he did? So does Zacchaeus have to climb this tree? If he didn't climb the tree, Jesus wouldn't see him. Jesus said, I must come to your house today. I must. Wow. Predestined. Oh, wow. So Luke was a Presbyterian. We know. Well, he was a physician, so yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Interesting aspect of the story. I must come to your house, and well, what if he didn't climb up that tree? Or is the notion that that these things are in motion and they happen, and then we have this, where Barbara's talking about transformation. He has to see Jesus. He wants to see Jesus for some reason. Why would a chief tax collector want to see Jesus in the first place? Yeah. I mean,
See what all the fuss is about.
yeah. And then, all of a sudden there's this really great sense of transformation here in this guy. Because Jesus must come to his house. Wow.
He is full of lust. He must go to Jerusalem. He must die on the cross.
Yeah.
He must say to somebody like Zacchaeus.
Yeah. Yeah. And that even in the midst of these other people grumbling, they grumbled. He's going to be a guest of a sinner. And that's a big deal in today. Eating with folks is a big deal. For us, we might eat with just anybody, but in their day, it was kind of a cultural thing, It meant something that he went to his house. And again, you have to keep, like I said, all these years I've been reading this story. I go, must. This week, or 2 weeks ago, actually, I was a little ahead. But I'm like, must. Wow.
Zacchaeus had said, the house isn't clean. You can't touch it.
So did Zacchaeus say that he would give away all this money right there when he came down and was in with all the people who were grumbling about him?
Yeah, let's see. Let's go back up. Let's see. So all who saw it began to grumble and said, I've gone to be the guest of one of the sinners. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, yeah, okay.
Right there amongst all of those guys, he
Yeah.
said that, and the people who were grumbling about him
Yeah.
had to hear him say that.
Yeah.
And probably with their mouths open.
Right.
The Lord maybe did this.
Yeah. Interesting question, Tal. Now let me just throw this in, and this will again. This is another one of those things. You look at stories forever and ever, and might I open up another possibility just to make everybody here go, oh my gosh, I've never thought about this story in that way before. So you go back and you look at stories, right? You start reading things, and I'm just like everybody else. You pull out your Greek text and you start reading it. No, I'm just, the verbs here are present tense, and I don't know why. I would love love to go sit with the people and translate it, because what in the present tense, what it would say is Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I give in the present to the poor, and and if I've defrauded anybody anything, I give back 4 times." As in, these are things he was already doing. So we could look at this story this way. We're not going to do that in the sermon today because I don't want to confuse everybody. But because it's so not the way we hear it. But could it be that Zacchaeus is we've looked at him and said he's a chief tax collector, he's a thug, and he's been the good guy all along. Jesus, I've already been doing these things.
But he says, I will give.
Right, but that's how we translate it in English. But in the text, it's present tense. And I'm sitting there going, okay, Bruce Metzger and all you guys from Princeton Seminary who translated this text, why did you do it future when it's present? And so I have so many questions about that. I'm like, okay, I'm no Bruce Metzger, okay? He's like way up here, smart, but he's late. But he's gone on. But one of those saints. But I want to say, why isn't it? Because that does change the story. It does. I mean, it gives us a different perspective. It would say, Zacchaeus is already the good guy, and he's just misread because he's a chief tax collector. Which brings about a lot of other questions. But what if we read it that way, and he's already doing those things? And he's like, what's the problem? I'm already doing this stuff.
But were the grumblers not?
Maybe not. I don't know. I've just...
I mean, the deed is collecting from would know if he's giving back. I mean,
I don't know. How is it though? So we just misread people sometimes. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I can't talk to Bruce because he's. I don't know. But I have to talk to somebody who knows a lot more Greek than I do. But to have that question. But let's get back to the way we typically tell the story. And I just do that sometimes to make us understand that there's certain things in text that we take as givens. They're not always givens. And so we have to be careful about when people go, it's in the Bible. Well, there's some stuff in the Old Testament that's in there that's pretty, pretty rough. And it's in the Bible. I believe I'm biblical based. I'd be careful about that. I'd be careful about how I say that. Am I Jesus based is probably the best way we should say things. Am I going to be like Jesus, and as opposed to some other aspects of Scripture? But so we read this story and we hear about Zacchaeus, and we hear this notion that he's come into the presence of Jesus, and if we read it the way we read it in our text today, hey, I've been transformed. I am going to go be something different than I was.
But speaking of verbs,
Yeah.
in verse 7, it says, he has gone to
Mhm.
be the guest of one who is sent.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he was already gone, and when he stood up and spoke, he was just speaking
Yeah.
to Jesus and not to the crowd.
Well, I think he has gone to be the guest of. Jesus got, but and he does say he stands there. Yeah, we are not totally sure who the audience is, except for Jesus does say at the end. Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come," and it does say it says it to him. So we're not totally sure who all is hearing this interaction. What we do know, one thing we do know, is who does know about this interaction. We do, because we're reading it. And Luke wants us to know this is what has happened. So whether you have this misunderstood or you have this chief tax collector that everybody else looks at and says, sinner. And Jesus says, I have to go to your house today. There's no getting around it.
And why does he point out that Zacchaeus is also a son of Abraham?
Well, that kind of reminds everybody that he's a part.
You all have excluded him because he's the tax collector.
But
Even a tax collector is still a son of Abraham.
right. So which part is more important? Which label is more important? Okay. Okay, so the implications of that are then that's more important than him being the chief tax collector. Yeah. So how do we feel like, and it's good for us to think about that in stories. And this has been my thing lately, I don't know, is that we're really comfortable with these stories so long ago. Because we go, oh, Zacchaeus, what a cute little story. You know? Also, though, you think about what he does at the end here, what he's explaining that he does as far as reconciliation and the like. And that's a lot, right? Half. He gives half. And I'll pay back 4 times as much as I've ripped somebody off. 4 times. Okay. Are we going to live into that for ourselves? Be careful how we answer this question. Yes. Don't rip somebody off, okay. But okay, but even if we're thinking about how serious he takes reconciliation here. And also, we say he's a son of Abraham, and that's more important than him being a tax collector. Are we willing to look at people around us and say the same thing? It's easier, I think, for us to look at Bible stories and go, oh yeah, Zacchaeus, he's but to go, ooh, those people are baptized into the church. Is that more important than them being whatever negative other label you're going to put on them? In this day and age, I can tell you, modern day, the worst labels we can put on each other, it seems like, is either whichever side of the side you stand on, liberal or conservative. You go, oh, they're a liberal, they're terrible. Or they're a conservative, they're terrible. So is being a baptized person more important than that? See, should be.
Yes, it's more important.
Right, it is more important.
And how we see them.
Right. Do you see it that way?
That's why I'm asking you.
Treat him that way.
Look, I'm just standing here. I'm just reading. Y'all the ones supposed to be living. And
Does it have to be a baptized person that you treat?
well, I'm just saying because what made him a son of Abraham was he was circumcised into the faith. And what I'm saying is we see baptism as circumcision, how the Reformed tradition works. And so I'm saying, so Jesus is asking them, or whoever he's proclaiming this to, is do not forget this guy that you see as a traitor, because he's a traitor. And but he's a son of Abraham. Don't forget that.
I have a question.
Hmm?
I have a question.
Sure.
Could we read this?
Yeah.
What is that where you forgive somebody 7 times, no, you forgive somebody 77?
Yeah.
Could we read this as, you are giving back 4 times as much, or
Yeah,
if you do something wrong, give back 4 times 4
Yeah.
times.
Right. Yeah, he obviously is taking reconciliation very, very serious. Now, we could rationalize and say, well, he was really rich, so he's okay. You know, the singer, what's her name? Billy something or other just gave $11 million to. She's rich. It didn't matter. She gave $11 million. That's a lot of money. Maybe she makes a lot. I mean, I'm sure she does make a lot of money. I don't know her music, but I mean, she dresses funky. But so I just like, wow, that's a lot of money. Well, she's rich. She can do that. Like, well, I don't know. Still a lot. I mean, that's pretty serious. So do we take that kind of restitution, reconciliation as serious as what Zacchaeus is going through? And that is kind of like a 70 times 7, because we go, oh my God, how many times do we have to go through this? You know? And maybe it means a lot. And also maybe it means that reconciliation for us should be that serious too. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be more like, I'm sorry. And y'all go, okay. Good. Whew. That was easy. And I think here the point is that it's pretty serious, right? So what do we do with this story? We don't really deal with too many traitors. I mean, in our neighborhood, do we? I don't know many.
You're supposed to look at everybody as a child of God. There's a place for
Yeah, that's a troubling
Right.
perspective.
But
Yeah.
there's a place
Yes.
for everybody if you believe.
Yeah, true.
And you should treat them as such.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Ashlyn. I think it's a lot about just how you treat people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're treating people well, like she said, don't rip them off to begin
Yeah.
with.
Right.
If you treat them well,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to think you didn't have to do so much.
And it also calls to us to, doesn't it? I mean, if we see this as a transformation issue, that Jesus shows up and that there really is some sense of transformation that he brings to the door. Wow. If Zacchaeus is really this guy that we dislike that much, and yet Jesus has to come to his house, and let's not forget that part, he has to go. He must go. And that we can expect Jesus to have some sense of reconciliation or some sense of transformation. And maybe sometimes we forget that in this day and age. Well, the world's terrible. There's just no hope for anything or anybody. This story seems to suggest there is. And may I even suggest for us too, because I think people can be the hardest on themselves. You know, Jesus, preacher, you just don't know what I've done. I hear that over the years so many times. You just don't know what I've done. Well, I say, well, I really don't want to know, number one. And number two, do you think that is so much bigger than who Jesus is? Then maybe your Jesus is too small. transformation really, really, really is possible in the presence of Jesus. And are we willing to overlook that? Because if we are, maybe we should question what the heck we're doing here. You know. So, amazing story. And a great, kind of a neat thing to be a part of All Saints, although I screwed up the calendar. It's my fault. But, you know, I don't get to pick exactly when I can be off. But what a neat representation of what All Saints should really remind us of. Not so much these individual people, more so than Jesus transforming people into who they become. And us too, when we don't want to see ourselves in that picture.
I think the fact that he's seeking out.
Yeah. There you go.
It's not just us.
Mm.
It's not even just us recognizing.
Yeah.
It's the fact that he's out there for us.
Absolutely. I hear handbell people, and I know they're up against it, and I'm sorry. I broke my mic. Again. It just seems to be a part of the process. Worship committee. Let's pray. Gracious God, we give thanks for passages that really do challenge us as Zacchaeus. But may we also remember that Jesus shows up. He must. And when he does, wow, real sense of transformation happens. May that also be with us this day. It's in your name we pray.